Okay, thanks everyone for joining. Today we're going to talk about generative AI and how people in finance are using it. First, we're going to go over a kind of brief introduction of AI, how we got to where we're at today, how generative AI and large language models work, AI in your daily life, why adopting tech matters for corporations, and particularly some benefits of AI for asset managers. And then we're going to get into some actual workflows that work today in asset management using actually agentic AI. So getting started, AI has been around for a long time. And the joke that I always use is it's just never really felt like AI until ChatGPT came around. I'm going to date myself here, but the first real instance of AI that I can remember is from the movies when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the Terminator. And I think that has imprinted a lot of us with this idea that AI can come in, do anything, process a lot of information, and then figure out the optimal path to take for that information. But historically, actually, AI has been very purpose built for very small niches. So yeah, way back in the 50s, Alan Turing came up with the idea that AI could exist and that we would come up with tests to help distinguish between humans and machines, and that someday a machine would exist that would be unable, that a human would be unable to tell if it was a human or not. But it wasn't until really like 1997 when something really great happened in AI, where a very purpose-built machine for chess went out and was able to beat Garry Kasparov. Then we started getting little miniature versions of AI that helped us a lot in our daily lives. A lot of people remember like Clippy. There's some debate over how AI it was, but it was just a little thing that helps you find the right set of documentation, the right set of solutions for whatever problem you were solving. Not super advanced, but helping to get to the end outcome that people wanted. Then in 2009, as computing power improved, as the kind of GPUs and everything got better, and cloud became more prevalent, you started seeing use cases that really made a lot more sense, like Waze, Siri, and Alexa, where you were using AI to help guide you on your journey in the case of Waze, or you're actually literally able to talk to your phone in the case of like Siri or Alexa. Then you get to something that's a little bit more broad-based, where you've got like Watson actually winning Jeopardy. Again, you could debate how much AI was there, but it was really this concept of, if we can connect a computer to a lot of information that's out there, can we actually have it answer generic questions? And then finally, in 2022, when GPT got released, we get to this point of it feeling like Arnold in the Terminator. You can actually sit down, have a conversation with the AI, and it will give you answers that more often than not make sense and actually help you with whatever you're trying to do. So in terms of like, what is AI, without going into crazy boring details, I think about it in kind of like three ways. There's artificial intelligence, which a lot of the examples we just walked through. But a kind of an example that we all know is Netflix, using machine learning to watch or understand what movies you're watching, and then use that information to predict what movies you would like to watch based on other users' buying habits or viewing habits. Then we've got generative AI, which is the kind of like Q&A system that ChatGPT has set up. And then you have agentic AI. And the idea behind agentic AI, which you may have heard a lot about over the last 6 months to a year, is, can we create a system where AI is doing very specific tasks? Kind of going back to my original point about like Deep Blue being great and being able to beat Kasparov at chess. If you can construct AIs that are good at very specific tasks and then link those AIs together with an agent at the top of it, can you get to the point of building workflows that a human would understand and view as value add? And most of what we're going to see in the future in AI in general is going to be around agentic AI, productivity enhancements as we can take the Q&A setup of generative AI and really turn it again into workflows. So in order to really understand why you need agentic AI and how generative AI gets to how the answers that it gets to, I think it's important to understand what training means in the vein of these large LLMs like ChatGPT. Really, at the end of the day, the whole core concept behind ChatGPT and other LLMs is let's take as much knowledge as we have, let's take as much digitized human information as we have and throw it at the machine and then have the machine train itself to basically learn, right? But what's the actual mechanism by which it learns? And it's by predicting the next word. Predicting the next word, it's not obvious to me that humans do anything different. It's not obvious to me that this entire webinar isn't just a stream of consciousness out of my brain where I'm trying to predict the next sentence or the next word. And really, that's what ChatGPT does. If you give it a prompt like the weather, what is the weather going to be like in Toronto today? That prompt, what is the weather going to be like in Toronto today, becomes the context. And then its job is to predict the next word. And as soon as it predicts the next word, maybe then that gets added to the context and it tries to predict the word after and so on and so forth. And so we've got a little toy example here. The boy went to the blank, and then it's going to predict what the next word is based on everything that it's learned in that training set. And I think that it's really important to think about then what is actually in that training set, right? In the case of the ChatGPT, the idea is to be good at as many things as possible. So let's train it on as many things as possible. But in our case, we might care a lot more about finance. And we wouldn't really want ChatGPT predicting the next word based on articles that it read about Taylor Swift. So I think at the end of the day, how do we get something that takes a really long time to do, like training these LLMs, and convert it into something that can be useful? The other major problem with training LLMs is the data becomes out of date really quick. So the example I gave, what is the weather going to be like in Toronto today? It actually cannot answer that question because if you think about ChatGPT 4, I believe that the training for ChatGPT 4 ended in April 2023. That means that it actually has no access to information beyond April 2023. It has no ability to know what the weather is like in Toronto today, other than if it used previous history to make a prediction. So what's important is to be able to mix this concept of this really powerful engine that can understand basic reasoning with the specific tasks that you want to do in the specific domain that you want to do and up-to-date information. So how that actually works is basically a two-step process. The first step is fine-tuning models. And the way that you fine-tune models is you take a pre-trained foundational LLM, they call it, and you fine tune it for your specific knowledge base. In the case of finance, this may be as simple as giving it CFA textbooks, 10Ks, 10Qs, giving it analyst research reports, et cetera, and then fine tuning it to predict the next word based on that specific knowledge set while still basically maintaining the original generic knowledge it had. So what you end up doing is you decrease the level of general applicability, but you increase the specific level of applicability of the answers that you get for the specific knowledge base that you're fine tuning it on. Then if you go to the back to the weather in Toronto example, how do we actually solve the problem of giving it up-to-date information? And what you do there is you insert the system, which you'll hear called RAG or retrieval augmented generation, also sometimes referred to as a smart retriever, where basically you ask the question, it intercepts the question, understands what you're asking, and then reaches out to the appropriate system to get the relevant information and then adds that to the context. So what's the weather going to be like in Toronto today? Understand that I'm asking about weather, understand that I'm asking about Toronto, reach out to the weather.com API, download the data for today, and then add that to the context. So then the question of ChatGPT becomes, what's the weather going to be like in Toronto today? And then it fills in the answer probably in machine readable format saying, the humidity is X and the temperature is Y, and then it's able to generate this source informed answer, which basically can successfully answer the question of what's the weather going to be like in Toronto today, even though ChatGPT itself technically has no knowledge of it, by providing the answer in that context window. So everything that I've just described kind of gets you to the point of really understanding how we can get these systems to actually give really good answers and actually automate workflows. But before we do that, we're going to talk about how AI has already kind of like permeated a lot of your life. And what you're going to see is we mentioned Alexa, Siri, virtual assistants, right? Having the ability to talk to something and get an answer. What is the weather going to be like in Toronto today? These smart home systems where you can type in the temperature that you want. It will automatically adjust the temperature based on the exterior temperature, understand, from a machine learning perspective, can we optimize your energy usage, stuff like that. Netflix, Spotify, Amazon. Oh, it looks like you bought some toilet paper. We see that people who buy toilet paper also like to buy paper towels. We see that you watched Hitman. People who watched Hitman also like to watch John Wick. And then navigation, travel, Google Translate. I actually just went to Japan a couple of months ago. I was surprised that the level of English wasn't as high as I assumed that it would be, but Google Translate saved me. And basically the ability to just speak into this thing and then in English and have it come out in Japanese, or even take a picture of the menu and it automatically like converts it into English. All of these things have made our lives easier. And all of these things are probably, particularly in the case of like Google Translate or even the Netflix movie recommendations, things that we couldn't have even really imagined 15 years ago. And I think that's what you're going to see with generative AI and agentic AI. 2 or 3 years ago, we couldn't have even imagined that some of this stuff would work. And 2 or 3 years from now, you're not going to be able to picture your life without it. Just going through some examples here, just to highlight the importance of adopting technology early in order to have continued success. Just going side by side where you can see some companies here like Sears versus Amazon, HMV versus Spotify, Yahoo versus Google, Act versus Salesforce. Ultimately, companies that adopt technology first, companies that use it, are the ones that benefit. Even if AI doesn't do 100% of what you want it to do today, if it can do 10% of what you need it to do and save you that 10% of time, that is a worthwhile investment, because when it's able to do 20% or 30% or 50%, you're going to be at the leading edge of understanding what's capable, how to use it, and how to get the most out of it. And I think it's just a mentality that needs to be taken in a world, again, like 15 years ago, there was literally the first iPhone came out. And again, none of us can imagine our lives today without smartphones. The exact same thing is going to happen here with AI. So when we talk about kind of AI and exactly what I think is going to happen, what we're seeing today is increased productivity, primarily through like the Q&A nature of ChatGPT. If I want to learn something, I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to be able to get an answer. There's several companies out there, Microsoft included, who are building systems where basically you can ask Q&A of your data. Look across all my Word docs and come up with the list of documents that talk about a specific company or talk about ESG or talk about whatever. This is already kind of like in production and working today. Microsoft Office Copilot, again, being probably one of the best examples. But ever since I started this company 7 years ago, I guess, people have been asking me, how can I put my brain in the machine? Because what I really want to do is teach it my process and bring scale to my process. And with the technology that we have today, we are actually able to do that for the first time ever. And I believe that people sort of get caught up on this idea of, well, it doesn't do 100% of what I can do, or here's an edge case where it doesn't do well. But I think that they're missing the point there. I think the point is, if it can do something that takes your mind off of it, off of having to do that thing, then I don't see how that's not a net improvement. And I don't see how you spending your time working on other things isn't going to lead to a better outcome either in your personal or professional life, right? I think about it in like terms of washing machines and dryers. Just because the washer and dryer cannot fold my clothes doesn't mean it's useless. right? Ultimately, someone can go out there, do the whole process, use that old school scrubby board, and do laundry. But if you can throw it in the washing machine and the dryer and then fold it yourself, you've still saved incredible amounts of time and been able to spend that time doing something else. And I think that's exactly where generative AI is today, and where these systems are today. And then I think when you layer in this concept of continuous monitoring, that's where things can get particularly powerful, especially in the case of investment management. When you think about investment management, it's actually unique in a lot of ways. If you're an engineer, if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, in a lot of cases, you're doing these one-off jobs and you put the jobs away after, right? If you're an engineer, like a developer, you write a function, yeah, you write some tests for that function, but once you're done with that function, you don't have to go back and check up like, hey, is this function still working correctly? No, like a bug report will come in if you need to fix that function, but your job will just be move on to the next function and the function after that. If you're a lawyer, you write a will, you don't have to go back and like change that will necessarily unless the client instructs you to do so. In finance, we come up with investing hypotheses and we have to constantly be on top of those hypotheses. We have to constantly scan all the information out there and understand, is this still a true statement? Do I still think NVIDIA is the leader in AI chips? Do I still think generative AI is going to drive the economy forward? Do I still want to be invested in this theme? And in order to do that, you need to continuously monitor all the information that is out there. And that's something that's just really hard for a human to do because multitasking is just extremely difficult. Whereas reading thousands and thousands of documents, scanning it for very specific information, and then resurfacing that information to a human, that's exactly what AI is going to be exceptionally good at. So with that, I thought it would be beneficial for us to talk about some very specific use cases that literally work today and are adding value to managers today. This is using the new version of our platform. And before I do it, again, I want to hone in on the idea that it doesn't do 100% of the job. It doesn't go start to finish, come up with an idea, research that idea, execute the trade, monitor the trade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that it's useless. It can do individual steps along the journey, and it can basically take your brain, take your processes, and automate those processes. And if you can think about parts of your job or parts of your processes um, that are difficult and time consuming, then ultimately you can probably put it into words in a way that the machine can understand and do it for you. So using a bunch of specific examples here, I have idea generation. Find me companies that meet specific idea criteria. And I've abstracted that out at the highest level, but then given a very specific example here. I want to use AI to sort data and find me companies that that have current significant decarbonization efforts. I want to look only across 10Ks and earnings calls to determine if they have these decarbonization efforts. And I also want to include analysis on how they would perform if Trump wins the election. So in reality, what's going on here, right? If I'm a human and I'm going to do this job, what I need to do is go out and read 300 plus 10Ks and earnings calls. I need to identify every stock that I'm reading about. I need to put it into some kind of a list. I need to write down all the relevant information about it. And then I need to come up with a report and then, theoretically present that report to someone. What we did is we literally told the machine, all right, what I want to do is I want to find a list of companies that have significant decarbonization efforts. I want you to only use 10Ks and earnings calls. I want you to focus on the most recent earnings calls and 10Ks only. And I want you to include this analysis about what happens if Trump wins the election. And then what it did is went out and read all of those, understood what the goal was, and then came up with these answers. And I think, again, the important thing here isn't even if the answers are right. I think in general, the answers will be right. But the value is, instead of actually interacting with software in a way where basically like you click a set series of buttons and then you hope you get the answer you want, what you're actually doing is having a conversation with the machine, explaining to it your thought process, and then basically getting an answer. And if you get an answer that doesn't map to what you're looking for, then you can just have a follow-up conversation and explain exactly what you are. In this case, I consider myself a generalist. I'm not an expert on decarbonization and I'm not an expert on energy stocks, but it went out and it understood that like Phillips 66 is spending a lot of time, and I went out and independently researched this after, coming up with its own renewable fuel expansion plans. Particularly, they have one plant that they are going to be powering entirely by renewables. I think it's going live in the next year or two. And then they are one of the leaders in ESG overall, with MSCI giving them a AA ranking on ESG. WEC has a plan where they've got $23.7 billion set aside for this ESG progress plan. They're talking about exactly solar projects that they're doing, et cetera. And again, the machine is just going out, grabbing all of this information, finding the relevant stuff, summarizing it, throwing it back to you in a table, and then giving every single stock a score. I won't go into a deep dive on each one, but then once this is done, right, like I talked about, you need to continuously monitor stuff in finance. You can set this job live, and anytime any company in the S&P 500 releases a new 10K or earnings call in this process that I've set up, then what happens is it's going to read through it and understand, is there anything new going on with this company as relates to decarbonization? And recently it found a couple of companies here where Steel Dynamics is looking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 35%. And so like this job of kind of going out, analyzing stocks, and coming up with conclusions around those stocks, I still think a human is vitally important in the process. But the machine going out and being able to do this job of like scanning documents, summarizing it, understanding what decarbonization means, and then actually giving you an answer, this works now, and it would save you literally hundreds of hours of time now. And again, just going back to this one, this is just a specific example. I use decarbonization, but you could do anything. You could ask for like generative AI stocks. It doesn't really matter. As long as the machine can have an understanding and you can give it that understanding of what you're looking for, then it's going to be able to go out and do these manual tasks for you. Here's an example on research. So this is a real one, and actually UNP ended up reporting today. But ahead of UNP's earnings, I asked it to give me an earnings prep report. And I told it what I thought was important in an earnings prep report. And then it went off and basically constructed one for me. It understood what my process was, which is I want to understand what the most important KPIs for UNP are. And then I want you to look across recent news and previous earnings calls for those KPIs to get an understanding of where they currently sit. And then I want you to look across other companies that are in sectors or industries that may be relevant to UNP, and see if they've said anything that may impact their earnings report or may give me a hint at what they are going to report. So what do I get out of that? At the end of the day, I don't have to go out and read those other earnings reports. I don't have to go out and understand the KPIs or whatever around UNP. Not that I wouldn't already understand this, but having the machine go out and just basically do a double check of everything that's going on still is value add. I can still understand everything, understand all the KPIs, and then understand the underlying documents, click into those underlying documents and read more if I need to. Just be much more prepared. So for every single company that is reporting earnings, I can basically save a few hours of research per report. And so you can, again, see like it's coming up here with very specific things, understanding that the related companies are these ones, that those companies have already reported. These are what those companies are saying in their report. And then here are the key KPIs that they've been talking about: operational efficiency and safety improvements, earnings growth in a tough environment, and operating revenue and expense management, right? So I'm now prepared for the call. I know what to look for in the call, and I have it scanning news and other companies to understand, are other companies going through similar challenges. Here's another one that we would bucket broadly under research, but finding information across a lot of companies and documents. I want to find macro trends from earning reports. So I want to read all earnings reports in the S&P 500, particularly the ones over the last month, and I want to look for economic trends. And basically, I just literally tell the machine that, right? And when you think about how much work that would be for me, right? Some days there's like 30, 40 companies reporting. I'd have to be on top of all of those earnings reports and then pulling out specific macroeconomic trends. But I can ask the machine to do it. And then basically, again, it understands what a macro trend is, reads and understands those research reports, and then can break it down for me like it's broken it down here, that like interest rates and credit quality have been a big factor. Here's some companies that have had a positive impact. Here's some companies with negative impact, consumer spending and demand. Here are the positive ones, here are the negative ones. And then technological investments in innovation, highlighting something like Tesla, where they just released earnings and they're having problems scaling out their robotaxi and Optimus robot, whereas some other companies who are putting strategic investments in AI and data centers are actually starting to see benefits from that. So again, just this idea of this doesn't do literally everything that I needed to do, but it's now presented so much information to me that I am able to have success. Really quickly, I know now that there's an interest rate theme, I know that there's a consumer spending theme, and I know that there's a technological investment theme, and I now have access to all the information that can help me make the decisions that I need to, whether I want to invest with or against that theme. And I know that it's constantly monitoring it. So today, as all these new research reports come out, if there's new themes that come up or there's new stocks that validate any of the trends that are being seen, that information is going to be given to me. And then finally, kind of a deep dive on a specific topic. In the previous one, you saw that like interest rate risk and credit risk were a big thing. So I want to know what's going on in delinquency rates. So basically, I asked it, find a list of companies that have reported in the Russell 1000 and where they're talking about an increase in delinquency rates in their news or earnings. And again, it's just going to go out and just read tons of documents and then resurface to me exactly what it found. Here it found Citigroup talking about it, it found Synchrony Financial talking about it, it found JP Morgan Chase talking about it. And again, I can click into all of the individual stocks and find the information required to actually see, are these delinquency trends going in the right way, the wrong way? Do I want to bet with it? Do I want to bet against it? Or even finding individual stocks where JP Morgan actually had a much better result on delinquency rate than Citigroup. And being able to have that information at my fingertips, it allows me to do what humans are better at, which is make high-level decisions on the right way to invest based on being presented the right information, instead of me having to go out and hunt down that correct information. So I'm gonna end it there. Obviously, I'll get into Q&A, but really what I wanted to give you was an idea that basically this technology is here, the technology is here to stay, the technology is adding value to people immediately, and it's not going to replace 100% of what you do, but there's clearly like 50%, 40%, 60%, depends on your job, of probably the worst parts of your job that it can go out and do, read tons of information, understand what's going on, and then resurface that information to you. And I think the question for everyone is, what would you do if you could get that time back? How could you take advantage of that time? It's much less about the AI making the decisions for you as it is the AI helping you to make the best decisions possible. So with that, I will jump into questions. Feel free to post more questions in chat, but a bunch of people had asked questions in advance. So I will focus on those first. The first question, maybe a controversial one and maybe kind of exactly what I was getting at, is how effective is this technology going to be in replacing an investment associate, or would it be more as a kind of a best friend to an investment associate? And I think ultimately, I still view it as the best friend. Um, I think that a human can do stuff that the machine cannot do today. But what we can do is give you superpowers, basically. If you can go out and get all the information that you need, if you can describe your processes to the machine, then the machine can do those processes and leave people to do the higher level thinking. And I think the people that take advantage of that, and there's just so many examples of this across history, right? Like Excel. Excel is just absolute beast of a program that can do crazy things. And the people that have leaned really heavily into it, for anyone like myself, where I'm good at programming and I'm good at Excel, uh, when I had a job at the bank, basically I was a wizard to them because I knew how this stuff worked. I could make an Excel that did like literally anything. And I think that this technology is going to be the same thing. If you can have the AI go out and automate processes for you, then it means you can get to answers much faster. It means you can get your work done much faster. It means you can make decisions much faster. And if you can make decisions faster, then it's likely to lead to better outcomes for you. Whether that means spending more time with clients, whether that means putting your trades on faster, whether that means saving yourself from risks that might have been harder to detect otherwise. This idea of pairing the human and the machine together, I think, is going to be a very powerful combo. The next question is, what do you believe is currently the biggest misconception with AI, and what is the biggest opportunity not currently being recognized? And I think that's what I've touched on a number of times here. I had a conversation with a lawyer friend of mine, and I said, have you seen ChatGPT or some of the technologies going on around generative AI in law? And he said, no, not really. I haven't really been paying attention. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. I tried some technology 5 years ago and it wasn't very good and wasted my time. So I don't really care. And I was like, well, this stuff is newer and better, and you're going to get much better results of the questions that you ask ChatGPT. Um, and he's like, yeah, but if I'm working on $1 billion deal, am I really going to trust the AI? And I think that sentiment is where you are getting the biggest like misconception or the biggest lost opportunity. Because we can always find this like edge case or this situation where like, I'm not going to trust the AI or it can't do that, therefore it's useless. I think it's really important for us to focus on what it can do and how it can save you time. So in that legal example, maybe you don't trust it to do $1 billion deal. And that's totally fine. It's not really that important. But is your whole day, every single day, filled up with doing $1 billion deals? Probably not. The reality is you're doing a bunch of tasks where you'd really much rather spend your time on that $1 billion deal. You'd really much rather spend your time building relationships with your customers. You'd really much rather make sure that you got the important stuff right. And if the machine can go off and do the rote tasks for you so that you have more time to spend on that, then it's actually unlocking a huge opportunity for people. And so, to summarize that thought, I really think that we're always looking for reasons why we can't do it instead of reasons why we can do it. And if you focus on reasons why you can do it and reasons why it can add value, then I think you're going to find that there's a lot of opportunity to use this technology to save yourself time and, whatever that old idiom is, time is money. And if you can save yourself time, then how you use that time and how you use that savings is up to you. But I can imagine that each one of us has our own view of how we'd spend that time and how we'd use it if we could get an hour back a day or 5 hours back a week or, 25 hours a month. What would you do with that time? And I think if you look at AI through that lens, then you'll see what opportunities there truly are. Um, the next question is, which aspects of AI are asset managers most interested in based on my interactions? And this has just been something that has been like consistent for the entire time that I've been with Boosted. And that has been, I want to take my brain and I want to put it in the machine. That's it. At the end of the day, every single person that I interact with, they have some similarities in their investing style and process, right? But everyone has a unique process. And that ability to take your brain and put it in the machine is what held a lot of people back before, because I can't put my whole investing process into the machine and therefore it's not valuable. I think now actually you could put your whole investing process into the machine. And for me, from a software vendor perspective, it was always actually really hard as well, because you could have people who have 80% the same investing process, but 20%, the last 20% is different. Actually building software to satisfy that last 20%, it would mean I'd have to have like a million buttons, a million configuration options, and really have probably like the world's most complicated software. But with this technology available today, where you can basically just have a conversation with the machine, tell it exactly what you want to do, I can now simplify that whole process. I don't need to have a million buttons. I can understand that 80% is the same and 20% is different. So let the user describe how that 20% is different and let the machine do what it needs to do in order to do it. And so to circle back to the question, what did it really mean to put your brain in the machine? What it really means is I know that there's like unlimited information out there. I know that my investing process works, but what I want to be able to do is take my investing process and apply it across all the information that's out there. I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure that my process works in today's world where there's information overload. And I think that's exactly what this technology delivers. Take your process, describe it to the machine, and then make sure that it's getting resurfaced back to you. A bunch of questions here around use cases, um, stock picking, risk regime, prediction across asset classes. And I think, again, here it's totally and completely capable of doing that, picking stocks for you, understanding which part of the risk regime you're in, or making predictions on asset classes. But I honestly don't think that's the best use of the technology. I really think that humans are going to want to make their own stock picks. I do think that humans want to have all the information necessary to understand what regime they're in. And I really think humans want to understand why they're investing more in bonds or stocks or whatever the case is. And so I think the machine collecting and collating this info for you, keeping on top of everything, making sure that you have all the correct information that you need in order to make those decisions, I think that's where the value is. Being able to ask the machine, hey, I see that delinquency rates are going up. What happened the last 5 times delinquency rate went up? How did financial stocks do? How did tech stocks do? Whatever. How did consumer staples do? Ask those types of questions, get those types of answers, and then make the decision yourself, right? I think that human machine hybrid, the cyborg, is going to be a lot more powerful than just like turning over the keys to the machine fully and letting it do whatever it wants to do. Because at the end of the day, we all have to talk to our clients. We all have to explain the decisions that we made. And being able to have all the correct information and explain those decisions instead of just saying, oh, well, it's what the machine wanted to do, is probably going to be a much better customer experience for those clients, regardless if you're wealth management or asset management. Than just saying again, yeah, well, the machine decided to pick this stock, and I can't really tell you why. This is sort of related. The following question is related. It's about how important is the input from portfolio managers, and I think it's extremely important. And I've obviously been harping on it for this entire webinar, but to me, you want to have your process in the machine. It's not like you've become less important. If anything, you've become more important. It's just that you're bringing scale to your processes. And so understanding how the market works, understanding how stocks work, understanding how clients work, right? All of that is stuff that the machine is probably going to be less good at, particularly like psychology related things. But again, it's going to be way better than you at reading thousands of documents. So why fight the tide? Just let it give you the information so that you can make better decisions. And I think I'll just make this the, I'm going to look through these other questions. Um, Okay, so there's a good question here from Raj on when finding info across a lot of company documents, how does the curation of the LLM ensure that there are no biases? Um, and I think this is a great question where really it's the same process that a human has, which is you're looking for validation across the information that you're getting, right? And I don't know if you'd invest in a stock just because you saw one little thing. Maybe you would. It depends on your style. One piece of information that suggested that something is good. And really, for us at Boosted, we have this problem where LLMs work really, really hard to try and make you happy, to try and give you an answer, right? And that's what leads to the hallucination problem that everyone's probably heard so much about. So what we've done is we've taken all of the documents that we read and we look for validation across documents before we suggest things as ideas. Or at least we push those as being more relevant and more validated and push them higher to the list. And that process allows you to A, remove biases, and B, remove hallucinations, where by validating the information across multiple document sources, again, same thing that you do as a human, you can get to this point of feeling much more confidence in the machine. I think the other thing that we make sure that we do is start with these layers of like increasing complexity where give you an answer. Here's what we found by reading 100 documents. Then give you the ability to follow up and ask for more information, and then give you the ability to refer to the source documents themselves, right? But all of this is still time savings relative to you having to read and understand all of those documents entirely on your own. There's a couple of quick ones here. Which stock exchanges are covered? That's a twofold question. I think from a structured data perspective, Boosted covers all stock exchanges globally. But wouldn't surprise you to know that from an unstructured data perspective, i.e. like these written documents, that North America and English-speaking Europe have the best coverage. Doesn't mean that we can't handle other foreign languages and other markets, but the most liquid stock markets are the ones that are talked about the most, and therefore the ones that have the most information available and the ones that you can get like the absolute best quality. And I think this is a great question from Nicholas. How can AI encourage collaboration and knowledge sharing within an investment management? And like, just to go back to this is a process, like just pick any one of these, right? Let's say find me companies that meet specific criteria, right? Or tell me what's going on in UNP. This is a process that like largely existed siloed. You can imagine a sell side research firm or a buy side research firm. You have 10 analysts, each one covers a specific sector or each one covers 20 stocks. They know their 20 stocks, but their neighbor doesn't know the 20 stocks and their boss might not know the 20 stocks and the investing committee might not know the 20 stocks. And their job is to go out and make a pitch and say, hey, based on these stocks, here's what I would do. And they're going to have Excel documents, they're going to have Word documents, they're going to have a bunch of information where they have done their research, but it's kind of not going to be very centralized and not very well stored. If you think about doing a lot of this research within a platform like Boosted instead, then what's going to happen is all of these documents are created, they're stored, there's an audit log for the documents, and all of the process is documented. And so you understand how all of the decisions got arrived at, and you can understand what are the particular hypotheses that that investment professional is looking at as relates to this particular stock or this particular theme or whatever the case may be. And so by kind of centralizing the information, you're going to have much better collaboration across peers, and it's going to be much easier to share that information. And so I think this is kind of what I'm getting at with my overall concept, which is this technology is here, it's real, and it's helping people today. What it looks like 2 years from now or 3 years from now, it's hard to say, but you can definitely imagine a world where doing research looks materially different than it looks today, even if the process itself is the same, where it's stored, how you can audit it, a bunch of other stuff is going to change really dramatically. And in order to be at the leading edge of that, I think you need to be using this technology today to help understand what it's capable of, what it's not capable of, and exactly how it could better help you with things like collaboration across the team. Um, I think with that, we'll end it. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. And if you want to learn more and book a demo, please scan this QR code. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me or anyone on the Boosted team, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Again, really appreciate the time and look forward to seeing where this technology takes us. Thank you.